Hey everybody, my name is Chris. I'll be your presenter today. I'm gonna try to wade my way into screen and sound share. And if anything's going like terribly wrong, like you hear nothing and I'm just like jamming out, just feel free to let me know, hey, your sound's not routed. So sometimes people let me go for a weirdly long time before they're like, yeah, we haven't gotten your sound for about 15 minutes, so feel free, feel free to say something. Cool. Well, yeah, welcome to Wicked, Profane and Unholy Sounds. Um, yeah, my name's Chris again. So yeah, who's the jerk? Why are you listening to this guy? Well, let me tell you a little bit about my background. I come from the world of motion picture. By day, I'm a film composer, and where are we? But by night, I work on haunted attractions. The other part of my life is in the theme park industry. And I got into the theme park world because of a chance encounter with the LA Haunted Hayride and them bringing me on to do a score, which led to doing haunt scores for lots of other bigger parks, then just doing music for theme parks in general. But today's subject again is how to make wicked, profane, and unholy soundtracks. So before we get into some of the just pure sound related inventiveness stuff, let's just talk a little bit about sound and conceptualizing sound. So for me, the interesting part about sound isn't necessarily the, hey, let's put this together with this and make a brand new thing out of it. It's also in the more psychological domain of how you understand sound and the environments and the perspectives you're in. For instance, perspective. Is the sound you're looking for in a particular scene something that needs to be literal, like a piano drops from the ceiling? You need to hear the sound of the piano drop. There's not much room to think about other stuff. You have to address the obvious. Or is it environmental? Is what's more important than other more obvious things in the scene, the environment or the nature or the objects that are in the area around you? Or is it more of an atmospheric level where it's not necessarily just about what you can see or what's right in front of you that you're responding to, but maybe something that doesn't belong. The environment is not natural. There's an otherworldliness about it, and you're using the mismatch in information from the environment you can physically feel and see versus the one sonically you seem to be in. That mismatch in the brain can cause for some real shivers. And that leads me into the idea of image and sound. So in audio production, we talk about sound often like we do in a really similar language to photography. Like when I'm recording a full orchestra for like a movie, my mixer and I talk about audio image and how do we place microphones in such a way to capture the live environmental image with the reflections in the space that we're recording it to like really put the listener into that space. And you can use this to your advantage. Because if you're trying to treat a space with sound, some questions you can ask yourself is like, okay, what is the image? Is it an image with a lot of depth to it? And even if you can't actually have a space in your attraction that's truly a grand castle-like hall, you can create illusions visually that seem to suggest more space, but sound can you can add little things in the sound environment that sound like they project much further, feeding into the psychological effect. Or width is similar. And a lot of people treat sound as if it's something stationary, like, oh, kaboom, lightning strike, wolf howl. Or does the sound need to be in motion? Because remember, with a few speakers, audio can move. And sometimes rather than just having sound in one place, motion, or maybe you have a lot of sound sitting in one place, but then there's one thing that is highly unnerving and incredibly subtle that is not still. And maybe it's drawing their senses to another part of the room, helping you set up something from behind, right? Classic haunting trick. Distance and placement. This is something I find, this is one of the more common issues I find specifically with a haunt side of the industry, where it's like wolf howl, oh, right in your face, lightning strike, oh, right in your face, chainsaw, zzz, right in your face. It's like, okay, you needed those three things, you found them, but they're sitting dead center, bright as white lightning right in your face, where it's like, well, you know what if you used a little audio manipulation to have thunder off in the distance, set it way down, wash it in echoey reverb, and then maybe take your panning down, because remember, you can move audio to one speaker instead of another, and maybe the wolf howl can be in the distance, but the reverb travels out. And so now you have the sense of a howl, and it travels overhead off in the distance. Now you've created a sense you're in a small room, but there's emptiness all around you, right? So you're using the exact same sound, but with a little positioning and a little manipulation. Now you're creating the sense of environment and deepening your image. Perspective, that's what kind of what we're talking about. Where should sounds be coming from? Because you're not always above ground. What if you're in a scene where you're buried alive or you're locked in a basement? Well, everything you hear is going to have a particular muted tone, and you're not going to hear many brights in your sound. You're going to hear the kind of muddy mid lows, not the low lows, but, and I'll demonstrate something like that later. Tone, texture, environment, these are all things to think about with your sound. Presence is another category. Similar, is the sound obvious? Should it be just right there in your face, or should it be subtle? Or should the sound not match the environment at all? Is it just enough presence in the space to be a little bit spine tingly? Variety. And when I talk about variety, I think of it in terms of story structure and experience structure, where variety in a scene can also be a good thing if the scene needs it. But my concern is that a lot, especially with the haunt side of the business, is things can get single tracked pretty quick. Every scene is like, let's keep the excitement going, slam it 100% first scene, slam it 100% the second scene. But by scene 12, everyone's just a little bit numb to it. And it's going to take away from other scares that you've really carefully paced out through your show. If you numb people out with noise, it starts to take away from other stuff too. So just like all things, you need ups and downs. And the best way to control the ups and downs is in story arc structure. Like, what journey are you going on from the beginning? How do you build ups and downs that where the audience is the center of the attention? They are the primary character. And how do they travel through and experience the highs and lows of the adventure, right? And that'll help pace out everything. Synchronization and timing. This is one of my favorites. And this is, and it's mostly because I'm a film composer. I live in a world where you don't just let music run to be there. My question is always, why should music be here? Or do we need it at all? And why just have one track looping through a scene? Like, aren't there scares timed out? Doesn't anybody walk through a scene, step it out, experience what the attendee is going to feel, figure out the timings between this effect and people moving this way to being scared forward to another scene? And why not create a series of timing notes, design your music and audio to maybe like mislead. Maybe you have a track that just plays ambiently and free, but it's on a timer so that when the sound and the lights go, that's also the cue for actors. And you create this highly cinematic, relatively well-timed scene. Where music, sound, pyro, lights, everything goes together. And that's where like having, bumps, like special hits right when you need a scare, and they could be triggered from somebody, or you can, and often I deliver music in many different layers. As a scene moves forward, somebody triggers the intro part of the scene. We wait, an actor delivers a line, a nun with a ruler with a little trigger on the back hits the switch, and then the next track goes off with a fire. And so it's like this series of staggered layers that we deliver. Now, oh good, I really whipped through that quickly. Okay, now into the subject at hand. Let's go F up some sounds. So the first thing is, since this is, I think the spirit of what we're doing today is a little more do-it-yourself, and I'm kind of going in that direction because of all the industries I work with, haunters excel at this part the best, figuring shit out, and just making stuff work. Nobody does it better. There's nothing more to say about that. Between film and theme parks and haunts, you are the problem solvers. And so I'm kind of teaching it from that perspective, and just do what I do. In fact, I do have a Zoom recorder and they're great, but most of the time I just end up using my phone because it's always on me. And the best thing you can always do if you're just wandering around, you hear something crazy, you see something crazy, just bust out the audio recorder and just start just start like laying tracks down, just pick it up. I do it all the time. Every time I open a door and I hear this ungodly creak, I'm like, oh, yes. I tell everyone around me to shut the hell up. I take a, and every time I record, I hit record, take a big breath. And if there's people around me, the other thing I do is I give a countdown to silence. So ready and silence. And I'm running. Everybody hold your breath. And I let the door close. And then always leave, like, let's use the door. It closes. Give it like 1, 2 full seconds before you exhale and let everyone else exhale with you, because you need a little bit of quiet before you record and a little bit of quiet after, so you can trim around it and fade the audio in and out cleanly. And then there's all kinds of cheap and free DAW systems, and DAW means digital audio workstation. It's like where you drop your audio and mess with it. And there's free software like GarageBand, Audacity, Reaper, Pro Tools. It's actually, I misspelled this or mislabeled. It's not Pro Tools Live. Pro Tools First is the free version of Pro Tools. And that's like the industry standard audio software. And it's called Pro Tools First. My bad, I just caught that. So what do we do to go harvest these sounds? Well, I love junkyards. That's my first stop. Every year I have a little route around the Los Angeles area where there's where I just start collecting new things I think I'm going to need. And I took these pictures over at one of my favorite sites over at Apex Junkyard in the north part of the city. I love it because they've got these old like Cold War era missile shells laying around and just all kinds of neat stuff. In fact, I brought one of my early Apex libraries with me. For instance, I just found something like this metal box a little while back, and it just has this great tone. It's just my fist on the side of a big tin or some sort of metal box. Here's another one. It could be menacing, you know. What else do I have? Sticks on a ladder. Let's see what that meant. Ooh, there's a lot of jangly junk going on secondary to the main sound, which is always good, a little texturing. Truck grill. I think the truck grill in this picture is the one you're going to hear. I just ran a drumstick down it. Here's another one. Just a fun little noise. Lumber mills. So right up the street from my place in LA, there's a sawmill. Needless to say, the sound of sawing objects can be really great. Where's a sawmill? Do I have that? Sawmill, here's a few. I love the sound right after you run wood through, a blade. There's that little sputter at the end. That's really good stuff. Here's a pad, just constant. Put that with the sound of tomatoes jiggling and a dentist drill, then you've got a real horrifying scene. Lumber mill, fantastic. Dentist office is my dentist here in Central Oregon. Yeah, see, when I first started doing this, I would just walk into places I would see up and down my street. And I walked into a dentist office one day and they were like, oh, we're not really sure what the policy is. And one of the patients was like, hey, if he wants to record me, he can just come back. And they're like, well, I guess he consented. And they just let me walk back and record a procedure. And then all the dental technicians started getting really into what we were doing. And then they took me to this back room and it's like, hey, we have all these weird suction machines and this weird plastic thing. And then they started showing off all the cool instruments. And then I got a lot more after that. Butcher shops are wonderful for noise. All kinds of industrial machinery, grinders, crunching, blades, sawing. It's just a treasure trove. And there's a place up the street on just the same street. I don't really have to go very far to find cool sounds. There's a butcher shop that always lets me come in and record new objects, and they always keep stuff in mind for me at this point. Since 2012, people just expect me back every year over the summer, and they always have these new collections of things for me to try. Now, if you're looking for real blood, gore, and guts, believe it or not, squishing grapes around, the sound of spaghetti through your fingers doesn't really translate the way you think it will. Looking at it and seeing it live and feeling it is one thing. That is consistent. There's multiple sensory inputs that tell you weird, uncomfortable stuff. But just with a microphone, you don't get that much out of it. Veggies are where it's at. You want the sound of bones breaking? Well, now we're talking celery probably more than anything. Here's just a little bit of celery crackling. Yeah, carrots, potatoes are great too. Celery is just the most unnerving of them. For some reason, when you're recording into a device, it really translates. You put a little sloppy something wet like squeeze an orange or a tomato on top of that, it really sells the point. There's another celery. Yeah. Do I have tomatoes? Here's a tomato. I find them particularly gross. Just jiggling tomatoes. Here's a pulsating tomato. And yeah, so that plus sawmill would equal nightmare, right? So yeah, that's the idea. Just sample everything you can. It's never wrong to have something cool. And I have a couple extras here. I remember I was trying to get I got close up to one of my cats having dinner once, and I thought, oh, that could be upsetting if used right. And I tried to get up close to get her to speak a bit. Roma. Roma. It's like that last meow plus some of this. It's kind of gross. And then I realized, oh, my wife's roasting salmon in the background. And so I went over to the stove and I just held the Zoom recorder over the sizzling salmon sound. It's just salmon. It's just cooking on a pan, all right? It's just the most benign thing you could ever imagine. But contextualized properly, it could be part of something much worse. And it turns out the next year, I had to do the music and sound design for a scene where this church explodes. And there's all these like nun demons floating around, and there's all these like burnt up little children, like, you know, like repeating some Catholic stuff, and I needed the sound of like this inferno burning, so I found campfire samples to burning houses, and then the sound I pushed up to the front more than anything else was the sizzling salmon, and everyone reported having the sensation of like their flesh and the flesh of the characters burning very intimately. And so what I did was I kept the most intimate, close, upsetting noises the closest, and the more intense fire and inferno-y noises way out in the back. I pushed them behind the mix, and it somehow made it a lot more upsetting. So if it was just loud inferno, it feels like you're just on a ride. But I played the more subtle thing where I pushed that up, and suddenly it felt like you were really in it. So it's just a little audio manipulation choice. So mix and match. So the reason I was pointing out some of those particular items so far was I found this really useful even with music. So here's an example where I put together a lot of tomato saw potato stabs, and it's in a song called I think it's the Surgical Clinic Scene. Was it in this album? No, it was this. What year was that? I think it was this one. Surgical Clinic. There it is. You're going to recognize some of the sounds you've heard. There's that pulsating tomato. Remember that tomato jiggle I played a bit ago? That's the exact same jiggle. And then to get that knife blade slice sound, believe it or not, you don't want to stab a piece of meat or a potato or something like that. You just put, in fact, knives don't even, that knife shing, shing, shing sound doesn't sound that great from actual knives. Believe it or not, forks translate way better in most microphones. So I put two forks together, sing, kind of like rub them apart and just sing, try to get as much ring out of the one on the bottom as possible. And so I would boom, jiggle, blah, 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 sing, like that. And that's what you're hearing. Some junkyard percussion, boom, boom. So butcher shop machinery is coming in next. Here we go. It keeps building up like this for a while. And then we're finally into the scene. It just becomes mostly music, you know, but so that wasn't like a big, so the drums only came in then. Until then, it was just like the metal box, lots of small, dangly, weird things I've sampled other places than just the really gross percussion. And I turned those into the rhythm of that track. So yeah. And local resources. So audio was difficult. It's not the most intuitive thing. There's a reason it's a whole field of expertise. And as haunters, you've also got a lot to deal with. Putting on a show without theme park budgets and crews is easier said than done. And it's hard to know what to delegate. And so if you're a little more delegating minded when it comes to audio, even if you're really not, even if you just need people to help expedite you through the process and help you get your sounds all cut up. What I recommend is, just reaching out to high schools and colleges. Especially in colleges, you're going to find slightly more reliable talent and maybe a little more experienced, but these are places with audio labs. Like a lot of high schools now have these really sophisticated AV rooms and music rooms with computers that have like Logic Pro, Pro Tools and stuff like that. And kids who, whenever I go visit one of these places, they often teach me new stuff about software that when I thought I knew these programs down, try talking to like a 16-year-old about software. They always know more than we ever will. And I end up learning more than they probably do whenever I visit these places. But that's why you may want to work more with them, see if they can help you design, like if you capture sounds or get them up to capturing certain kinds of sounds, and then start cutting them, cleaning them up, create these little libraries of noises that you can start assembling for your scenes later, start dropping audio in these sessions. Like, okay, scene 5, it's about this. Start collecting all your noises and start laying them out and let them help you quickly get through it. Just offer experience, either college credit, if you could partner with a local small school, offer them some promotion for their work, like give them credit for being the sound designer, composer, whatever. Just form ongoing partnerships with these programs and opportunities for these audio students or the kids who are interested in this sort of thing, because it is genuinely good experience for them. And if you partner with the program itself, they can turn it into something that may give them credit, which incentivizes them further to do a good job for you. Then if you want to get to some more musical stuff, even if you don't read or write music at all, you can just do things like pick a note, have everyone play it, and then be like, okay, everyone just start doing stuff to it. Like no plan, just like, hey, tuba, pick it, play an A, boom, like cool, now just fuck it up, just like make how guttural and weird and raspy and deep can you make that, and just make them start like messing with their instrument, like make them shift their mouthpiece around, and like, hey, clarinet, can you do a screechy banshee shriek with that note? Hey, flutes, what do you got? Just start like, just collect everything, and like weird stuff will happen. With bands, you have the most wacky instruments. You have they're basically these like really big noise makers, trombones, trumpets, and all of these instruments can do weird sounds. percussion is the most vast section of any orchestra, and there's so much they can do. And I do a lot of bowing against metal objects, where I take like a double bass bow, and I'll just bow weird metal things I see out in the environment. If there's like a gash in like some metal railing and there's a smooth enough surface, I'll try to bow a rail or like a pot or a wine glass or just anything that'll resonate. Especially like gongs, cymbals, timpani heads. And I actually brought a few examples, like, so one thing I really like doing is just take a Super Bowl, just a rubber Super Bowl barbecue skewer, and just cram it into that Super Bowl so it makes a little like drumstick with a little rubber head. Go find a tam-tam or a big gong. And all you got to do is do wide, broad motions across the face, and you get this otherworldly, crazy sound. And I have some of my own recordings, but I thought I'd let you see this so you can see what I mean. So here's a Super Bowl against a big tam-tam. Yeah, different things happen as you go to different parts of it, right? Or do the same thing and go find a timpani in some high school classroom and just start like running over the head of a timpani, and you get crazy stuff like this. I mean, that's just a messed up sound, and it's just perfect. It's just completely acoustic. Like you would, if I just played that with no context, you would think a sound designer from like a movie created some monster dinosauric scene, but that's really not the case. Choir, go visit see if you can just be like, hey, I'm the owner of such and such attraction. I want to feature some vocal scariness at my next show. Get some like screams and shrieks. Or have everyone like all sing the same pitch, everybody get into unison from all around the room. It's like, okay, that half of the room, hold that note, the other half of the room, start slowly going down, try to create a distance between them. Have everyone like hold a note and start bending it in imperceptible quarter tones, everyone in the room with the same pitch. But then as you like, you can say, as my hand moves up, the pitch bending gets more severe, and they just kind of lead them in a freestyle. No music knowledge necessary, but you're going to get something really, really cool. Or vowel shifting, like right? Like you can do something with that. Freaky whispers. I love those. In fact, I'll play you a track where it's more on the orchestral side, but we did want to feature a lot of whispers. I think this one has some of my whispers in it. Here we go. And then Amanda comes in and sings, but there's whisper still going underneath the surface.
Think on old and future choices. What do you have?
It's just that little bit of texturing under the surface that just makes even kind of a very not scary track a little unnerving. And that's the only thing about it. Using chants and incantations in other languages is fun. I remember at one point, like I was using so many, I was going to all these like satanic worship sites to look for evil Latin chants, and I was using it for several years. And then I had this one park owner in Los Angeles who was like, she's like, I'm starting to feel like it's going to be bad luck at some point if we're like really cursing everybody. She was like, maybe we could use something else. And she's like, hey, I've been taking these yoga classes and I was given this mantra recently. What if we use that instead? And I was like, I don't know. But then she was like, it was something like no yo oh rang aikyo. And I was like, now wait a minute. Like you get enough guttural low male voices, no yo ho ring aikyo. And I was like, that could be spooky. And that's what we did. And it actually translated more aggressively than the Latin chants were like Domine Sanctu. It's like, yeah, I get it, but there's something more primal about the no yo ho ring ike, right? There was just more space for it. And I thought, you know what? But I think it was by accident, but we discovered something a little cooler. And I've been doing that for years. I have these big demon choirs chanting. So whenever I drop off my wife at a yoga class, like I kind of peek around, see if they have any really good mantras that have just the right number of syllables. And if the word gets too wordy or long, then it's not that usable. It has to be short, choppy, like no, yo, ho, ring, I, key, right? You know, there's something more just primal about that feel. And then sometimes I ended up getting a great track a couple of years ago because I followed someone into a yoga class and they let me sit out front, kind of behind the back, and just record them warming up with these vocal things. And I'll actually play that for you because I got some funny stuff. And then I started messing with it and bending the pitch around. Here, where is it? Taste of you, yeah. And so those samples, of course, you're in this like trippy, weird world. And then the next scene, all these people turn into cannibals and they chase you out. You have this super spooky, I think it's the next track, actually. Then it turns into this one. And then the chase starts picking up and that whole thing, you know, but here I've got some of those. I think I've got that yoga sample just right here. Here's what I actually got. So as that teacher's leading them all in with their ohms, like no one's matching pitch or anything. And I was like, this is a horror movie. It's like, if I just close my eyes, this could be anything. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to come back for some more of this. And so choirs, strings are fantastic for this stuff. So I'm a string player myself. So I brought my cello as an example here. Let's see. Oh, I got this really short headphone cord. This is going to be super weird here, but you know, so the thing strings are probably the most famous for in terms of effects are sliding. That's what the word glissandi means, or like glissando. That's not particularly spooky by itself, but you get 30, you know, like high school kids on one string, all sliding up at different speeds on different pitches. It turns into this mess of rising noise. And then there's all these other kinds of glissando. There's ones where you just touch the top of the string, but don't press down to the fingerboard. And then some where you put your thumb down and then you touch with your third finger as you gliss backwards. Sorry, it works better on this string. So it kind of makes these ow, 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 seagull noises. Bending pitches, have everyone play an A, then begin to bend them slowly in quarter tones. Right, it's different than sliding. It's that imperceptible. 30 people doing that all at the same time is really spooky. And then do the thing with the choir, have everyone, one half of the room stay on the A, The other half of the room starts sliding backwards from that same A. And I can replicate that effect. So I have an A on one string, then I'm going to do a closed A on the other. Now one A is going to drop back, the other is going to stay the same. Turn the bow upside down, use the wood of the bow. That's called colenio. Right? Or play behind the bridge of the instrument, the bridge being this little thing in the middle here. Play on the other side where they have no control over the texture or pitch. Like no one gets to pick how that sounds. And when you have a whole group doing that at once, it's absolute chaos, which is great. Small children, because they are terrifying. And the thing is, they are not trying to be, they just are. Here, yeah, I'm just gonna go right to Charlotte. So there's this little girl back in 2015. He was not a little kid anymore, but oh my God, I would just do stuff where I'd be like, I would say, hey, Charlotte, like in a spooky voice, tell me, like say, play with us, and then tell me a story. And then you just let a little kid start talking in their spooky voice and it's like, just keep going. And the most effed up things come out. And so for instance, like here's one I remember liking from Charlotte.
Come play with us. Yes, come play with us forever.
Like I didn't ask her to say any of the rest of that. I just said, come play with us. Here's another one.
Come, kids. Come, your mama's calling.
Like I didn't ask her to say that, but it's fucking terrifying. Here, what's this one? I'm gonna get you.
Yes, I'm gonna get you.
So basically, just give them a starting point and they'll just go with it. Yeah, put some like nursery rhyme bells under that and you've got yourself a horror show. So a little bit about recording process. Here's like it's hard to know what people already do or don't know, but I wanted to go through a couple things here. So basically you can use just your phone voice recorder or get something a little bit snazzy for a couple $100, like a Zoom recorder. If you're going to get like super into it, you'll get a much cleaner, fuller image from Zoom, because on an iPhone, you'll kind of hear yourself holding the phone. It'll pick up a lot of the things you don't want to. So you have to know a little more about how to EQ and clean stuff up. But a Zoom recorder gives you a better sound for sure. All I got to do is hook that thing up into a computer, just download the WAV files, and then just kind of drag and drop them into a program like Pro Tools First, GarageBand, Audacity, all free stuff. Yeah, drag and drop into here, one of these two, and then just start messing around. And because time is always a thing, sometimes you just got to grab them offline, and there's a whole bunch of banks out there. I couldn't list them all here, but like one you can go to really easily to get free sounds is freesfx.com, or is it it's like a .com. This is one of those .co.uk. It's some sort of British site, but if you look up free SFX, it'll probably pop up. Audio Hero has a great library. So if you want to subscribe for like a few months at a time, it's like $10 a month and you can get all kinds of cool stuff. Then Pond 5 is where you go if you want some real beastly stuff, and you're going to pay like $5 sometimes to like, I mean, you can pay a lot for stuff on there if you want, but every now and again it's like, oh my God, I need a sound that is out of this world for this, and nobody in my circle is expert enough to do that kind of thing. Then you know what, go ahead and spring $5-10 for the centerpiece sound of your show, whatever. So gosh, interesting. So I want to leave time for us to have questions and answers. And I've gotten through a lot of this stuff here. Yeah, how about this? I'm gonna I'm going to wrap it up. And if we have some time, I'll demo one more thing. Because, an hour is not really enough time to get into all the in the software, show how to EQ and fade and cut. But I can bring that up if we have a little time at the very, very end here. But I do want some Q&A time. So with that, my message for everybody is expect more from your sound and music. People don't know why they respond to things better, but they know when it's quality and when it's not, because quality affects how people perceive everything about your show. Because, your music matters. This is my contact. Say hello. This is where you can find me. You go to musicforhaunts.com, or just through my music management company, you can go to info@ChrisThomasMusic. Say hi, talk music, talk sound, whatever you want. So with that, let's do a little Q&A time. And if everyone's consensus is let's go into Logic and learn how to EQ, then we'll just do that. But I'd love to hear about what you're doing, your shows, what your interests and sound ideas are, just whatever is interesting to you. So let's do a little moderated chat here.
Sure. I'll check the chat here for you, Chris, and see if anybody's got any questions. Any tips for dealing with soundtracks that bleed into other rooms?
That's you. It depends. There's no straightforward solution for everybody. It's a thing. It's like a normal problem to face. It depends on how much soundproofing or deflection you can actually put in your room without messing up the design of the room. But really, it's more about the design of your show. Sometimes there's not much you can do about it. Speaker placement is everything. Knowing how to place sound to minimize reflection in the wrong direction is one thing. But if it's a big open top to everything else going on in the room, then it's just one of the harsh realities. But I would say try to position props and big items, or put big drapes in a corner that will eat up the direction the speaker sound is coming from and not reflect it into another space. If there's a way you can manage those two things and still get what you need from the sound. But often the reality is you either have to invest in these insanely high-tech speakers that cost a lot that will help minimize some of the sound, or you figure out where sound comes from, what can absorb it, and how do you minimize that? So, yeah.
Oh, we got a whole bunch of them.
Oh, cool.
Let's see. Bleeding into the room. What is the legality of using music from artists in your haunt? I had heard it's less than 30 seconds is okay.
That's a myth. Using any copyrighted material is technically not legal. There's ways you can pay cover fees to the big PROs. Oh, I see someone in the chat right there. Yeah, ASCAP, BMI, CSAC. Those are like the big three that you can pay a cover fee to. But the thing is, that doesn't exactly work either. Not all music is registered that way. And you kind of just need to reach out to the artists themselves. And I try to make it easy. It's like, like with my stuff, if you're a charity haunt, like you're 100% charity, or you're a home or a yard haunter, you should be, I don't think you should be charged for using music. All of mine is free to 100% charities and yard haunters and home haunters. But if it's a commercial thing, it's like, I know there's still not a lot of money to go around. So I try to work out a deal directly where it's like, hey, we'll just find some way to make this work for each other. And for a lot of artists, sometimes just the credit is good enough. They would rather, I know a lot of people would rather you be able to use something than not. They just want to know that you're reaching out to them. That's 90% of the battle there. And most artists will be cool and screw the ones that aren't, because what do they think they're going to get, out of us? But anyway, yeah.
You talked about depth, distance. How do you do this in a 2-channel stereo, or do you need surround sound like in a movie?
I mean, surround is cool, but really what you can do with 2 speakers in stereo is amazing, with just right and left. And if you learn how to put a sound in a track and use the pan knob to make it move, from speaker to speaker. You can have speakers on either side of the room and you can feel something drift over your head pretty much. So there's a lot you can do with just 2 channels. And I don't recommend trying to get into 5.1 unless you really need 5.1.
What would you say is the best bang for your buck when it comes to multi-speaker setup for a traveling effect?
That's a great question. You know, the hardware isn't so much my specialty. I know some people who do that. In fact, you know, this is West Coast Haunters. For anyone who's in the area, the guy I consult with on pretty much everything hardware related is Ken Webster. He is like the man when it comes to like sound and stuff like this, and how to best integrate technology and finding the best budget solution. So Ken Webster, Sinful Audio, he's who I would ask about that. I ask him all the time about this stuff. So, because I'm more the production side of all this. Yeah.
Someone asked, what about sampling artists?
I'm guessing sample artists for use in a haunt. That's the same thing as using copyrighted material. In fact, that's even more dangerous. When you're sampling a major artist who's repped on a major label, it's not that it happens that often, but when they go after people, they go after people. Like they make examples out of people. I just don't ever mess with that. You either pay the big BMI, ASCAP, CSAC license cover, or you just start reaching out directly. Then you can get away with almost anything most of the time. But if you just start running people's tracks, and like Sony BMG is like, hey, this really big commercial event is doing this, they'd be like, let's shut them down. We're going to come after these punks. And that's what they do. So I don't advise it. Yeah.
Sound effect versus music.
Easy. What's the scene need? What's your story? Does your story need music? Does the scene need music? Depends on what you've written. That's always the first question.
Any other questions by anybody?
Let's see, were there some earlier in this chat?
There was a big one here that would have taken me a while to read about electric guitar.
Pick up sounds from speakers. That's a very specific production question. Yeah, I mean, for Chris there, yeah, awesome. If you're getting what you're looking for with that, then cool. Yeah, go for it. If anyone else wants to try a process similar to that seems pretty fun, actually. I don't see why not.
He followed up and said, and record direct from pedal board with an interface to the computer. That's what I do, just throwing it out there for other guitar players.
Yeah, that's like the standard version of doing things, is microphone to preamp, which goes into your software. So you're recording into like GarageBand or something. Yeah.
Someone asked, if you tweak a track enough so it isn't recognizable, is that legal?
Only if they can't recognize it. I mean, so the rule with sound effects online, so you can go to Pond5 or Audio Hero. Believe it or not, even though they're royalty-free sounds, I'm using my big air quotes here, when you download them, what's not legal is taking that sound, use it all by itself. Like, here's the sound. So what you're supposed to do is actually layer it and manipulate it in ways where it becomes rich. So you have to change the character of it. And so as soon as you like run distortion on it or mess it up somehow, then you fulfilled your obligation. And luckily in our business, we're in the business of messing up some sound. We don't want everything that clean. So that's why I'm a really big fan of just go out there and record something weird. Every time you can, like, sometimes I flip on a light switch and the craziest things start sparking around the room, and then one of them's buzzing, another one's buzzing at another pitch. I'm like, this is remarkable. Like, that's a whole scene. And then I like flip the switches on and off for an hour, record all the buzzing, and Or like I closed a window recently and it sounded like metal rods shaking in the depths of hell. I was like, what? Like this, what is this window doing? Like what's under this thing? And it was just the most dark and menacing noise. And it was in my friend's bathroom and I just kept opening and closing their window for 30 minutes. And like they must have wondered what could be going on in there. But yeah.
Any other questions anybody have for Chris?
Cool questions. Yeah. I'm curious if anyone's working on a show with that, and you've had any specific like thoughts or ideas. Like we have enough time to bounce off some stuff.
I don't know about anybody else. Oh, Claire says you're a delight.
Oh, Claire, you little honey dripper. Thank you.
I don't know about anybody else, but I Googled on Amazon how much a Super Bowl was after your sound effect. That was such a cool sound that you can make with just a Super Bowl on a stick.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, right?
Really cool.
Or just go if you can go find an old busted up bow, violin, cello, bass bow from some orchestra program. Like, hey, teacher, where is your worst bow? Which one is basically garbage? Can I take it? And they'll probably find you one and just run around and just start bowing shit everywhere you go and just capture it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yeah, you have my attention for a little while if you want to run ideas by. Yeah. Or we can just.
Somebody asked if you've done any cool sounds with a harp.
Oh yeah, yeah. Harps are fascinating. They have really cool harmonics. Bing, bing, bing. There's like a node you can touch and like hold down and bing and trigger these really high little sparkly notes. But the beauty of a harp though is actually that has a lot. If you ever get to stand next to one, they actually have this really deep body sound. They're not just these light, flowery things. If you're close enough, or you might put a mic near the body of a harp, kind of like if you put a microphone under a piano, you get this warm, thundery, rich goodness. And from a distance, you can't hear it, but a harp has this like beautiful body sound, and you can like probably like twang a string, but I wouldn't sample it right next to the string. I would go behind the harp in the body where you could hear it shake around a bit. Yeah. Oh, here's some people. I see someone from Calgary, like Calgary, Canada. I worked with an attraction in Edmonton a couple years ago. I love Alberta, unless you're from like Calgary, Missouri. I don't know, but oh yeah, Canada. You know, my problem with Canadian music though is that everything's in the key of A. Sorry, you guys. No, but you're wonderful. You're wonderful.
I'm working on a gruesome set at the moment of a living room full of corpses, trying to get ideas for maybe something classical and bone chilling.
Oh, so musically. Oh, well, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can play that. Like, what do you want? The question is, what do you want people to experience the moment they walk into the room? Is it kind of like, take it in for a second, it's just chilling under the surface, kind of heartbeat, just like it's more like bone chilling? Or do you want people to walk in, lights come up, and just pure shock and reaction? Those are two very different pieces of music. So like, what's the emotional spark you want people to have the minute they see what they've walked into? As I can hear, speaking of harp, I can hear like something low, boom, the harp, dong, 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 like kind of steps of fate sneaking up, and just like, and then they're way down low, but then have a couple violins up high, no vibrato, nothing warm, just a shrill, empty, just leave all that space in between empty. There's no warm middle ground, right? That's bone chilling to me. Or everyone up high, bending around just as loud as they can bow, and they're just sliding back and forth. That's like a bit of a shock. So there's like two emotional versions of that right there, if that's useful. I don't know.
There's a whole bunch of new questions. There was one about, we did a drive-in attraction last year and used Bluetooth speakers. There were some pros and cons. Any tips on getting sound into a vehicle? I thought of the radio transmitters, but there's a way to get around sound, ? Assuming their vehicle has decent speakers.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, I've never been the one. I've done some stuff like that where I've created things for people to drive through, and we like alter these little radio broadcasty things, and like it was scored as you go through the show. But I'm not the one who set up the tech. Again, that I'm more of like, okay, here's what we're doing. Here's all the different layers we needed delivered. How do we make the sound? And I create stuff. I'm not the installation person. Again, Ken Webster would be my first line of defense for that question. And if he can't do it, he'll know who could. Yeah.
See, where were we? Have you ever worked with a player piano?
Oh, I've always wanted to get something programmed on one. I haven't done that, but I've done player piano scenes where they just kind of they actually programmed the piano out after the fact, so it looked like the keys were going. But I just wrote the music and it was just triggered inside the piano, so it wasn't a real player piano. But I've done it for the effect, and I have some old pianos in Oregon and Los Angeles that I just janky old beat up things that are way out of tune that I just go record it all on. Yeah.
Somebody had said radio broadcasters are the only way to go with that type of drive-through thing. I know with our experience, one of the things that was kind of nice is we used FM transmitters, and I was worried about how it would work if you had different soundtracks playing on different transmitters all in the same station. But it actually works as they move through the haunt. It kind of, the signal fades out of one area and then gets stronger in the other. So you can actually have multiple tracks going as long as you're all playing on the same channel, because you don't want somebody to keep having to change channels as they're driving around.
Yeah.
And it worked. I thought we'd overpower each other, or that nobody would be able to hear other people's tracks, but I was kind of surprised how easy that worked.
I loved your show. I went through in the fall. I went on like the stormiest night where there was like no actors out. It was severe weather, but because you're an Oregonian, you're like screw that, we're opening. There was like a handful of actors, but I loved it. My wife and I had a great time driving through. Yeah.
Cool. It was fun. Somebody said, I noticed after a while you start hearing the same sounds being used in quite a few haunts.
Sounds, probably.
Yeah.
Music, you definitely do. That's always been one of my beefs, is that it's just play, let run. Because then, like, what does that music have to do with that your scene? Like, what? I mean, because the wrong track comes on, the mismatch in information. Because I mean, imagine like, I know how much time you put into like tuning out a room. People walk into a room, what it took to put that room together and curate like the design, the faded walls, all the props, the sculpting. I mean, everything you put in to make that room work. Put on the wrong soundtrack and it just sounds like cheesy synth. It's like, and then but you have this A-grade cinematic scene that looks like a bad Leprechaun movie from the 80s, right? And it's like one undermines the other. And my whole mantra since I got into the haunt thing is like, no, what you do is actually remarkable. The music is what's killing you. Like, it makes all of it look cheap. You go to a movie, I mean, I have examples where I score one scene like 3 or 4 different ways, and I ruin it 3 different times until one of them, it's like, oh, what's in that scene? Why does it need to be this way? What's the speed of the edit? Well, that tells you a lot. How deep are the shots, or how tight are the shots? Well, that tells you about how broad you can go with instrumentation. Like, what's the emotional trajectory of it? It's like all these, when you look at those things, and then it's like, oh, wait, I do know what the scene needs. And you actually do know everything you need to. You may not know how to write music, but you know what the right music is. That's the thing. I don't need to tell you what's right. You already know this. You may just need to start bringing on people to help you find and match the tracks. Or in my case, like bigger parks bring me in to just like go through that and score it exactly to their specifications. Because it's not that you don't know what you're looking for. You do. It just needs to, yeah. So anyway, I'm off on a tangent now. You've hit the rawest nerve in my professional life. And it's mostly a problem in haunts. This is the one industry where it's the most often. It's usually the same soundtracks over and over, which is the other problem I have, is that it's not broad enough. Yeah.
Well, I think we're out of time.
Oh, yeah.
We've pushed past our 1 hour mark.
Cool.
I appreciate you giving us a lot of information, some cool sounds.
Well, I hope it inspired some creative ideas for somebody. That's the point, you know. Yeah.
This is being recorded, so we'll push that out later. So Chris's information that he brought up earlier is on the recording, so you guys will be able to get in touch with him that way.
Cool. Yeah. Well, sorry in advance, YouTube, about all the F-bombs, but that's how it goes.
It'll be a private channel, so it'll be.
Oh, good. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Trevor.
Thanks, Chris.
All right. Applause here. Let's do it like all right. Thank you very much.
All right.